With all the new high-end graphics cards in the market, you may be thinking, is there anything left that's cheap? Well, today on the table, we get a $30 graphics card in 2026.
It's an RX 470 4GB that shows up with one minor defect, but all in all is in pretty good condition. What can a $30 GPU actually do in 2026? We're gonna find out, and we didn't just test easy to run games. We ran some higher end games and the results are pretty surprising. Let's talk about that after word from today's sponsor.
Whether you want to grab some cool new tech, upgrade your gaming setup, or buy a brand new gaming PC, now's a great time to do it with today's video sponsor, Newegg. Right now, Newegg is running their Fantastic sale, and one of the coolest parts is their price protection program. That means if you buy an eligible product and the price drops during the protection window, you may be able to get the difference back. So you can shop with a little more confidence instead of constantly wondering if a better deal is coming tomorrow. One deal that stood out to me is a Zotac gaming desktop with an RTX 3050, Ryzen 5 5500, 16 gigs of RAM, and a 500GB NVMe SSD. It's a super solid entry point for PC gaming at just $750 and can handle most titles at 1080p with ease. And if you're looking for something a little newer, there's a Zotac gaming desktop with an RTX 5050, Ryzen 5 5500, 16 gigs of RAM, and a 1TB NVMe SSD. That's a great option if you're looking for something with a little bit better of a graphics card and more storage, since it's at 1TB instead of 500 gigs. Plus is only $850. Between the Fantastic sale, price protection, and all the other deals Newegg has running, it's definitely worth taking a look at what's available. Be sure to check out the links in the description down below to learn more about Newegg and check out their Fantastic sale. Big thanks to Newegg for sponsoring today's video. Now, let's get back to it.
So this card right here, if you've been wondering this whole video, this is a XFX RX 470 4GB, and this is an awesome card. It's a card that, like, I would almost say was really a pinnacle of the channel. Anything that involved like the RX 400 series and the RX 500 series was our go-to card for the longest time, because they kind of advertised these as entry-level 1440p cards as well as really good 1080p cards that didn't break the bank. I mean, almost all of them were under $200 MSRP.
And the specific one right here we got from respec.io, which is a eBay seller that does a lot of recertified selling of graphics cards and other PC parts. They are a really good seller on eBay if you're looking for a cheap deal on a graphics card. This one showed up, and the one caveat, and you will see it in this B-roll footage, is the HDMI is covered up, because in the listing they mentioned only the display ports work, which, to be fair, we do have 3 more display ports, and I guess the DVI may or may not work. I wasn't able to test that. I would assume if you buy one of these, just assume the 3 display ports are the only thing that works, but you still have 3 video out. Honestly, when I got this thing, I thought it was only gonna have 1 working port, 1 display port, but the fact that it's 3 display ports, I really don't even care too much that the HDMI doesn't, and for our capture card, we end up using an adapter anyways.
So to go over some quick tech specs of our XFX Radeon RX 470 4GB RS XXX edition, this card was released all the way back in August 4th of 2016. It's actually when we graduated high school, and it was an MSRP of $179. It was PCIe Gen 3x16, had 4 gigs of GDDR5, but of course you could also get it in an 8GB variant, and then TDP is 120 watts, and our specific card just requires a 6-pin for power.
I mean, you're really not seeing much, especially in this PC space, this cheap that can actually be functional, but how good is it exactly? Well, we decided to benchmark it in a bunch of games. We threw it on our open air test bench, which I will say, even though it is our lower end test bench, is a higher end test bench for a GPU like this. It's a Ryzen 5 9600X with a BA50 motherboard and 32 gigs of DDR5 memory. This will alleviate any sort of bottlenecking we would have from a CPU, so you're gonna see the best case scenario of this 470. There are some scenarios where this CPU is helping out this GPU a little bit, and if you do pair it with something low end, which we may do a PC build with this graphics card in the future, where that CPU may impact the performance a little bit and you might get less performance. So do keep that in mind. Let's dive into some games and show you the results. Alright gamers, it is now time to go over the benchmarks of this RX 470 4GB that we paid $30 for. Let's talk about the games we tested and dive into those results. We tested Fortnite, Lego Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight, Pragmata, Arc Raiders, Marvel Rivals, Cyberpunk, Rainbow Six X, and of course our 3D Mark Time Spy score. Let's dive into Fortnite first, which we ran at 1080p, low settings with performance mode on, and we got some pretty good results. An average of 219 FPS with a 1% low of 128, and that VRAM number, the number we're really keeping an eye on here, was only at 2 gigs of VRAM used. Now I started with Fortnite for one reason. The open air test bench we are using, again, has a 9600X, which no one in their right mind is building a gaming PC with an RX 470 4GB and a 9600X. And Fortnite is notoriously known for being a CPU bound game. So this is absolute best case scenario if you are running this GPU with a budget CPU. Realistically, a pairing that would make sense in my eye for an RX 470 at this price point, but you're looking at something AM4, even some older gen stuff, but AM4 4 if you want to get pretty close to the numbers we're getting here, so like a 5600X or Ryzen 5 5500. You can build a pretty solid budget PC, and this 470 can still stretch its legs. But Fortnite is one of those games, especially on the performance API, not running DX12, you're gonna have no problem staying below that 4 gigs of VRAM max limitation that we do have with this 470. And as you can see, hovering around 2 gigs, around 3 at times, is gonna be perfectly fine, and it was a very smooth experience. Now, this next game is one I did not expect to run at all, because I've been seeing videos online about how this is a very demanding game to run, and that is the new Lego Batman game, which we actually ran on TSR, 50% render scale, so basically 720p if we're running this game on all low settings, and we actually got an average of 100 FPS with a 1% low of 60, and our VRAM was maxed out at 3.8 gigs used, but it was incredibly playable at these settings. And this is not running any sort of FSR upscaling, which I thought I was gonna have to run, or run even a lower render scale. This is a pretty optimized game, so shout out to the team who made this Lego Batman game. Maybe we should start praising these developers, especially in the market they're in right now. Everything is so expensive. Optimizing these games with lower VRAM requirements, or just lower requirements in general, to get up and running so we can actually enjoy games on our budget PCs and not have to spend a fortune on a new one right now. So praise to the Lego Batman team, because again, at least on this mission, I know maybe later in the game when it's more open world, the FPS could drop, but on this mission, getting 100 FPS average means we have some room to work with, and we can get a 60 FPS average later in the game most likely. So this one was surprising to me, but it actually ran really well. Now, another game that I've been enjoying playing, PRAGMATA, 1080p low settings with FSR3 set to balance. We are getting an average of 69 FPS, nice, with a 1% low of 58, and our VRAM was at 3.7 gigs used. Now, I love PRAGMATA's menu because it really helps people out who are struggling with VRAM to optimize their settings to work well with VRAM and show you what each setting does. It's a really well done menu, and another developer we need to praise to continue to do this stuff in future games. Now, there were some weird things, and you can tell me down below if when I was going through and just lowering all the settings that I accidentally turned off the HUD, because the performance was fine for what I expected, but for some reason I lost my crosshair and the HUD was gone. I don't know if that's just a VRAM thing. Maybe in the settings where I lowered a bunch of stuff, it got rid of that. You let me know in the comments down below. I never seen that testing other PCs. Maybe it was just a random bug. This is the kind of game I probably wouldn't recommend you try to play, but if you do pair with a budget CPU that's reasonable for the 470, there's no reason to say that it can't play this game at least 60 FPS if you're okay with a few dips below 60 in more demanding areas. Next up, Arc Raiders. Well, do people still play Arc Raiders? I feel like this game has really fallen off a cliff with their player count, so let me know down below if you still play Arc Raiders. We're running 1080p low settings with FSR set to balanced, and we ended up getting an average of 79 FPS with a 1% low of 64, and our VRAM used was around 3.4 gigs of VRAM. Arc Raiders has always been a game that when we benchmark, we always tell you guys it uses very little VRAM for what quality it's putting out. Now, yes, we're running lower details here, so I do expect low VRAM usage, but even on higher details, it rarely exceeds 8 gigs of VRAM being used at 1440p or sometimes even 4K. So this is a game that's a good example of one that is optimized well for low VRAM, and this budget GPU can make a playable experience. It's not amazing. It looks pretty low end. You could go with an Xbox Series S and get a much better experience, but it's still pretty cool to see that this system with the GPU that we have can at least run this game, a modern game, on lower details at 60 FPS, making it accessible for people who are balling on a budget. Now let's do an esports title that's a bit more demanding. Marvel Rivals 1080p. We ran low settings with no ray tracing because that's a big part of Marvel Rivals. The ray tracing is what makes this game very demanding, and we only got an average of 59 FPS with a 1% low of 46. So this is one of those games where the forced ray tracing that's baked in, yes, you can disable most of it, but there's still a little bit in the background, is really causing this older gen GPU to really struggle. Again, the 470 has no ray tracing support built in, so it's really gonna have problems with these modern games that do force the ray tracing on the graphics card. I wouldn't say this is playable. You could go even lower, or maybe go a really crazy FSR preset, maybe FSR performance, and potentially get a playable experience. I would imagine in a hero shooter like this, where things are gonna get very hectic in certain scenes, just like this benchmark tool, it's not gonna be a very competitive friendly experience because you're gonna be dipping below 60 decent amount of times. Now let's talk Cyberpunk. 1080p low settings. We went with FSR balance for this one and almost got a 60 FPS average. We ended up getting an average of 58.63 FPS, a minimum of 46.64, and a max of 72.20. Is another one we're gonna have to run a more aggressive FSR upscaling if you want to maintain 60 FPS, but I've always known as well in the actual Cyberpunk game when you're in the open world, it is a decent amount more demanding than the benchmark tool, so you will probably get below 60 with this GPU, which this is definitely a stretch. This is one of those games that does use a decent amount of VRAM. It's an older game, but it does use a lot of VRAM and resources, so I didn't expect this one to run nearly as smooth as the other games I showed you guys that seem to be optimized for more budget GPUs, but it is a good test to show you that this GPU is, well, still somewhat playable in a game like this, but definitely wouldn't be my go-to recommendation. Now, the last of the games we tested is Rainbow Six X, 1080p medium settings. We're gonna be getting an average of 87 FPS, a minimum of 68, and a max of 99. This is one I would run on low details, lower render scale, and everything if you want to maintain a higher refresh rate experience. It's definitely capable, but just for switching things up, I definitely wanted to try a medium preset just to add a little more quality to our gameplay experience, and that does keep the average below 100. So in a very competitive game like this, definitely drop the render res and everything to where you can get 100 plus FPS. Now, all the benchmarks were incredibly smooth, but one thing got a little bit weird, and that was 3D Mark Time Spy. Now, let's go over the score real quick. We end up getting a total score of 3,918 with a GPU score of 3,543 and a CPU score of 9,831. Throughout the benchmark, there was some weird coloration that was popping up where it almost symbolized artifacting. Got me a little bit concerned that I ran through all these benchmarks and just killed this GPU. Now, I did go back and run the benchmark again, and it was running a bit better and got the same score. So I think there might have just been a weird bug with our capture card, but just keep that in mind with a GPU like this. We're talking about a card that has been through so much. It has been through multiple mining crazes. It's been through a lot of different systems. It's an old graphics card, so this is a GPU that wouldn't surprise me if it just decided to give up after running through the suite of benchmarks that we ended up running in this video. I still think these are solid scores and the benchmarks are good, but it's a $30 GPU. I am honestly very impressed with the performance we got for 30 bucks and the fact that the 4 gigs of VRAM went further than I even expected. I thought a lot of these games would not even launch, but they actually launched and they ran really well. So I do give this thing a seal of approval if you're looking for a really cheap plop-in GPU. But again, it's a $30 GPU. Don't expect perfection. So now we finished benchmarking this graphics card. Let's bring Jackson back in here. Let's wrap this video up.
So you guys saw the results. At the end of the day, this is a $30 graphics card, and honestly, you probably don't expect much with that, borderline a paperweight, but realistically, this is still a great card for people on a budget. It just shows that a lot of these newer games, I think because of all the AI crap causing prices to just skyrocket, it's causing games to have to be able to run on lower end hardware. So as you can see in the benchmarks, we ran a lot of newer games.
And before doing the end of this video, I did go on eBay to see what other sellers had when it comes to the RX 470, and there were some sellers, even Respec, that had different model versions of this card that were like the 8 gig model that you can get for close to the same price, but then they come with caveats like only one DisplayPort actually working on those. So if you do feel like your game is a little more VRAM hungry and you saw some benchmarks and you're like, well, performance is fine, but I maybe want a few more gigs of VRAM, the 8 gig options are on the market, but I wouldn't spend more than like 5 or 10 bucks on them because realistically, the GPU was the bottleneck in most of the scenarios we tested, so the extra VRAM buffer is gonna help us out a ton. It's a $30 GPU. It can play games, and I definitely wanna build a PC around it, so let us know what you think of that in the comments down below. And if you wanna buy a GPU like this yourself, whether you're building a new PC or upgrading your current system, links in the description down below will be affiliate links, and they will help us out.
But as always, we hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure you check out our other 2 YouTube channels and also our twitch.tv/toastybros. Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
See you guys in the next one. Bye.
So like Matt said, we're probably going to use this 470 in a PC build. And yeah, at PCBros.tech, we sell even our lowest in builds for a few $100, and we sell our highest in build for thousands.
PCBros.tech, maybe you don't want a deal hunt for your own 470, maybe you want a budget PC, or maybe you're spending a lot more money than the 470 can offer you. You can buy one at PC Bros today. Use code ToastyBros on checkout. You will save 3% of your next purchase. See you guys later. Goodbye.